Andrew, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Pristine Connections Podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here.
You are the founder of Beefyverse.
Correct.
And I would love to know the backstory to that name, but we'll dive into that. First, tell me about you. Tell me what got you here.
Yeah. So long story, but essentially both my parents are doctors. Neither of them were good with technology at all. So when I was probably like 8 or 9, my dad was PC, my mom was Mac. It was just like, here's the computer, figure things out, install the printer drivers, like install new software, anything that we need to have for the house, because I was the oldest of 4.
Sure.
And so it was like, well, we can either hire the IT person or we can have our eldest son do it. And so started with computers at a young age. I figured that I would always do something with computers later on, just because I really enjoyed working with computers. Wasn't super into video games like early on. Like my parents were pretty strict about that. But into high school, I remember one of my favorite classes was Web Design 1 and then Web Design 2 afterwards. And we were like hard coding JavaScript, CSS, HTML, like doing actual coding before there was platforms like Squarespace, Wix, Elementor, and like some of these other things that make it super easy to build a website these days.
Yeah.
So I remember doing that and like doing projects just for the high school, like updating high school sites. And that led into working. I was studying marketing at university, and there was an internship that opened up with the university's marketing department. And a buddy I was living with at the time actually, took me aside and said, "Hey, I've got this position. I'm leaving. They need somebody else to come in and fill my shoes." And so I hadn't done anything really with social media, paid advertising. It was all websites up to that point. And so I went and interviewed. They liked my portfolio and started, essentially running, I think the age of 20, a lot of the paid media that they were running at Biola University, where I went to school down in Southern California. And so did that for a couple of years. I actually had a profile on this platform called Upwork. It still exists. Like I haven't been on it in a long time, but there was an agency that found my profile and said, "Hey, would you be interested in interviewing with us for like a 1099 independent contractor position to run Facebook ads for a bunch of attorneys?" So I kind of did a couple projects for them. They liked what I was doing. And so I essentially was in college, but also working almost full time for an agency and traveling, doing sales for them, essentially selling digital marketing services to attorneys across the country. So did that for a couple of years through when I graduated from Biola, moved out here to Texas from the West Coast back in 2017. Love it here. Texas is awesome. But started working for a couple of mortgage companies, was lead digital marketer at Supreme Lending and then Synergy One Lending for a couple of years, and then started my own agency back in 2022, and here we are.
That's awesome. So the oldest of 4, all boys, girls?
Yeah, I have a brother and 2 younger sisters.
Okay, very nice. How old's the youngest?
Youngest is 22.
Okay, so she's just finishing college, right?
Yes.
Did she go to college?
Yeah, that's
Yes
kind of like a in process,
Okay.
like in and out of gap years and a little bit of school here and there. So
how did your parents take it when you were like, "I'm not going to be a doctor"? Are any of your siblings doctors?
No.
Okay.
So I remember growing up, we would like go on family vacations, and I think my dad, he's a radiologist. My mom's a dermatologist. My dad always kind of thought, he's my oldest son. He's going to become a doctor, right? He's going to be the next Dr. Haberman, right? And I remember going on family vacations, and he would have, this was like before DVD players, we had like from Best Buy, like the VHS little mini TV that he would stick up on like the center console in the middle of the car.
Yeah.
And he would have VHS tapes from like his medical studies, or it's like they're sticking a probe down someone's esophagus and it's like performing surgeries and all this stuff. And I'm like, "Dad, I feel like I'm going to throw up." So it was like a couple of those kind of scenarios where I was just like, you know what? I don't think being a doctor, like, I'm really cut out for this thing. It's like, I've heard that actually doing it, like actually doing procedures is very different than watching procedures, which obviously is what I was doing as a kid. But I was just like, you know what? Like, I think I need to do something besides becoming a physician at some point later in life.
Yeah. So you've obviously done a wide variety of marketing work. I mean, so what made you want to start your own business?
Yeah. So I was corporate at the time. So I was corporate financial services, 23, 24, 25, 26. And there were a number of different marketing agencies because I had thought about starting a marketing agency when I first moved to Dallas. But starting an agency when you have literally no connections in a new city, it's almost impossible,
Yep.
right? It's just a grind. And I actually considered moving back home to Oregon, but decided to stay here, get a job. And so I interviewed, got the job at Supreme Lending. There were a bunch of different agencies that sometimes our individual branches would work with, or like someone would sign a contract like at the C-suite level, maybe just like, hey, this is my buddy's agency. Let's work with them, kind of make the most of that relationship.
Sure.
And time again, it was kind of the same scenario where it was like lock you into a 6 to 12 month agreement. Like you're going to get taken out to lunch with 6 to 12 account executives that are all like rah, like, we're going to do amazing work for you. Like we're so excited to have you join. And then the experience time and time again was the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like there's 2 to 3 people on a Zoom call, like if there's 3 of them, 2 of them are silent. There's really only one person that's like doing any back and forth kind of coordination with you on marketing projects.
Sure.
And I just, because I wanted to like do good work, see what the opportunities were, would like on nights and weekends kind of replicate what they were doing, see if we could tweak it, make it even better. And almost every single time, like the results came back from those little weekend projects better than what those actual agencies were being paid, tens of thousands of dollars a month to do, right? And so it would inevitably come down to a conversation of, we're paying you X amount. Like as it currently stands, it makes a whole lot more sense for us to just hire a team internally and continue the work, but under our own direction versus working with you guys. Like, are there different ways that we can maybe utilize that relationship with you to actually make the most of your expertise? And they're like, well, if there's something you want us to do, like we're happy to do it for you. But I'm like, if I'm working with an agency, I don't really want someone who's a push button pony. Like I want someone who comes in, takes charge, says, based on our experience, this is going to be the best thing for your business, and then just executes on that, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw a big opportunity with my business partner who started the business with me to start an agency that didn't have contracts, that was essentially just performance-based, where it's like, hey, every single month, like we want to provide as much value to you as possible because we want you to go from month 1 client to month 2, month 3, month 4, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the idea for the agency stemmed from, was like our tagline is, no BS, no contracts, just media results. Like the idea is that provides a lot of trust, transparency, and accountability. And then on the side of the client, like for our existing client base, it becomes, okay, like these people are trying to impress us, like they're trying to do a good job. How can we from our side help facilitate more opportunities for them to capitalize on?
Sure.
So like for our real estate clients that we have on retainer, it's less of like, all right, here's the bare minimum, you're getting the bare minimum every month, and more of, hey, we've got a new listing, can you come out and do a drone shoot? Or like for some of our clients, like one of our clients is a LegalZoom competitor, and they're like, hey, we've got a bunch of content opportunities, like, and they're actually out competing LegalZoom and some of these other companies on like LinkedIn and other social platforms, because we just work with them really closely to, humanize their business, right? I think that's where a lot of people get caught up in marketing, is they just think this is the way that we should be, or they try to position themselves as a really big corporate brand, and they kind of miss out on some of those opportunities to just be people and be authentic. And I think in marketing, that's where that's what a lot of consumers and even businesses that are looking for vendors are looking for. Like they're not necessarily looking for the biggest company to work with. Like they're looking for the company that they like, know, and trust. And so the marketing kind of becomes a support for sales instead of trying to like sell people on a particular service.
Yeah. I guess tell me what's been the biggest motivator for you then. Obviously starting a business is tough. I wouldn't say you're necessarily new here anymore to Texas, but obviously that was a big driving force to starting your business, is getting established. And now that you're established, you've started a successful business. So what motivates you?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, it kind of comes down to like looking back on something and being proud of what I've done, like feeling like I've used my life effectively. That's like the biggest motivator for me, is just like every single day, like I want to go to bed thinking, wow, like I'm proud of what I accomplished, like did good work, helped clients accomplish something that they couldn't have without working with us, right? I think it's always motivating. Like even Tom Brady talks about this. Like I saw one of his recent interviews where he's like, he would look at people on the other teams and like almost kind of look for something, like, oh, they said like this about us, like, almost like looking for something to like hold as a grudge. And like, I don't have grudges against people, but I do like find it motivating when people kind of take bets against me or the business, or be like, oh, well, you guys just do this. I'm like, okay, like that's not for me like something that I get upset about. That's motivation. And so that kind of stuff motivates me too, to be like, I don't just want to be like every other agency, right? Like, I don't just want to be like every other agency owner. Like, I don't want to be like everybody else. Like, I want to go above and beyond and like create work that not only fulfills contractual obligations, but we're super proud of, and we want to push out and be like, hey, these are the kind of projects that we do.
Sure.
So I think those are some of the motivating factors.
Yeah.
And then I've got 2 dogs, so got to take care of them. So.
For sure. What kind of dogs do you have?
I have a just turned 2 at the beginning of the year, Siberian Husky. And then I have a 6-month-old Alaskan Malamute. So
how's the 6-month-old? The puppy stage.
She's like just a bundle. She's like always excited to do literally everything.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like, another motivator in and of itself. It's just always nice to like come back home and have people, or in this case, little 4-legged friends that are super excited to see you.
That's awesome. So obviously marketing companies are very large around here, but there's, I mean, that's anything in North Texas. There's just a saturated market for most industries, I should say. So what's the differentiator between you versus another marketing agency that's independent? I'm not talking about corporate marketing firms that only do it for that one business, just in general, what really sets you apart besides the no contracts? Just
the contracts one, obviously that's like, that kind of leads into other differentiators because, then it's, how is our content marketing different than the way that other marketing agencies do content marketing? How is our drone videography and drone photography different than the way that other agencies do it? I would say in terms of differentiators, like any marketing agency that's doing marketing, there's other people that could do the job, right? It's not like we have some secret proprietary solution where it's just like our way is the best way and the way that everyone else does it sucks. So I think it's good to believe in what you do. Yeah. And you can believe in what you do and think that you offer a better product without thinking what everyone else does sucks, right? I wouldn't say we're a disruptor. Like, you hear that a lot where people are like, we're disrupting the roofing industry, or, we're disrupting financial services. Sure. And I'm like, okay, like, disruptor doesn't mean that like you white labeled ChatGPT and like turned it into your own like internal company search query, right? I see a lot of that running around, and that's part of the reason that I got out of corporate is I'm just like, I can't, like, it's difficult for me to market things that I don't believe in. And so that's part of like what we do in working with clients. Like, we don't take on everyone as a client that comes to us. Like, we have to kind of run through their business. And I would say that to, frankly, any business, like, work with an agency or hire internal marketing staff that believe in what you're doing, that are excited about coming into work every day. Because if your marketing people aren't excited about what you're doing, that unfortunately translates to your marketing and how people perceive your company. Because if you've got, if you're only paying someone like $35K a year coming out of college to do essentially marketing admin work, but they're also doing video editing, they're like doing company branding, tone and voice, content writing, graphic design, publishing, advertising, like, their heart's not going to be in it because they personally don't feel like they're getting taken care of. Right. And that's, I think, the typical marketing route is, you come out of college, you make peanuts, right? And companies are just like, oh, you're doing it for the experience, right? But back to your original question, which is like, what are our actual differentiators as a company? I think our drone videography, I'm really proud of a lot of the drone work that we do. We work with a lot of roofing companies, landscaping companies, and real estate agents, both here in North Texas and just in different parts of the country. So I personally love doing that. Like, I like to tell people it's like playing video games for work, remote controlling quadcopters up in the sky. Sure. So it's just an enjoyable piece. And again, I think you want to work with people that enjoy what they're doing, right? You want to work with insurance people that are passionate about insurance. I know you just interviewed George, and, you can see that just in the way that he comes across, right? You want to work with people that they're going to do good work because they want to do good work,
Right.
not because, you're going to force them, on threat of a lawsuit,
Yeah.
or like, you didn't fulfill your contract, like
Yeah.
what gives, right?
Right.
You want to work with people that just care about what we're doing.
Yeah.
I care a lot about what we're doing. So I think like that's a big differentiator for us. And again, it's not like a disruptor thing. It's not like, our way is the best way or our way is the only way.
Yeah.
We do good work, happy to like share case studies with anyone who wants to reach out to us. But, I like waking up every morning and like helping people have better marketing and like get in front of people that they wouldn't otherwise.
Sure. And it's just a fun job. You're not stuck just being in a job that you literally despise so much. Because I've also been there.
Yeah. I think that's something that motivates a lot of people that start businesses is they're just like, if I had to go back and work for somebody else, like, I don't know if I could do it. Like, I fantasize about moving to Alaska and just like, elk hunting for a living and living off the land. But it's like, you know what? That's like, maybe when I retire.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've built up enough, I feel like, where we can really take the agency to a really good spot here within the next couple of years. But I think it's also good to like think long term and be like, what's the next step? Like, what do I personally want to accomplish? Like after I feel like my work here is done.
Yeah. Which I guess is moving to Alaska.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'm sure my dogs would like it. So I'm sure, my future wife would love it just as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah.
Well, we'll see about that.
Or you might find somebody in Alaska. I'm just kidding.
I actually had, so one of my good friends, his name's Jeremiah Whalert, and he lives in Idaho. He used to be in Southern California, and he shares that vision with me of moving to Alaska. But he has a wife and kids, and his wife was like, best I can do is Idaho. And I'm like, I can see myself,
That's hilarious.
potentially
Like
being in a similar
opposite.
scenario.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I guess it gets cold up there, so it's kind of like Alaska, but not really.
No.
No,
Having grown
not
up in
mountainous.
Oregon, it's like it gets cold.
Yeah.
And like when there's 3 months, 3-4 months out of the year where it's just really cold and drizzly all the time,
Yeah.
like it starts to get to you.
It's like Washington.
But yeah, here in Texas, it like, pours down rain, we get lightning storms, a lot of thunder, hail around here. And those are some of my favorite times just because we don't get a whole lot of that around here. I love severe weather so long as there's not tornadoes running through my neighborhood. That's
Hail,
like the one thing that I'm kind of like, that's a little outside of your control.
Yeah.
But.
I mean, fortunately, we haven't had that this storm season, or really the last couple storm seasons. So
Levi, if you're listening, we don't want more storms. So.
Yeah, no, please, no hail. So you've obviously had a wide array of clients. Can you share any crazy stories, funny stories? Maybe clients, obviously, that aren't current clients.
Yeah.
So you don't get in trouble.
No, I'm trying to think. There's some good ones for sure. I mean, like you've got your standard stuff for marketing agencies where it's like you've got someone that signs up on one of your lower packages and then like slowly but surely they try to like massage that package into like your premium packages. And it's like, maybe we're not like a great fit doing all this.
Probably not.
I remember there was one particular scenario where we were running an event promotion for a client and it was like a grand opening type thing. And because of some of the promotional work we were doing, there was not like a TV influencer, but there was like a YouTube influencer that had a pretty significant following actually show up to this little event for like a brick and mortar business that was here in North Texas, right?
Interesting.
And so she was checking it out. She's like, this is a really cool spot that you guys have. Like, I would love to do like a feature of you guys on YouTube. And I remember following up with the client that I was working with later that week. And I was like, so how's it going with like so-and-so? It was like this local YouTube influencer, right, that had a lot of particular influence over their specific ethnic community. And they were like, oh, you didn't get their contact information? And I'm like, we were collecting photos and like on-site marketing the thing. Like, that's, I think, a good example of we really look for partners. And like, I like working with people that are just as invested in making the marketing successful as we are. Because at the end of the day, like you can't just expect your agency to come in and just like do everything with zero direction from you, right? They're going to miss out on opportunities because they don't know what you're doing in your business. Like they don't see those opportunities.
Yeah.
And if you hire an agency and you kind of like set them up to fail, where you're like, we see an opportunity, but we're not going to pass that along.
Yeah.
Or there's a scenario like that where it's like, hey, there's actually a huge opportunity. Like, you should want to jump on that as much as the agency or anyone else, because you want your business to do well. And I think if you view marketing as a team sport and less of an individual sport, it's like, you're not bringing an agency in to be a designated hitter and, judging the whole success or failure of it based off of their, one or two specific at-bats that you're referencing, right? It should be, hey, we want to make this as successful as humanly possible. And like, I've fired clients in the past because I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm just not getting the vibe that like you really want this to be successful. Obviously, it's a lot more difficult as an agency to make something successful if you don't have buy-in from the client from the outset. Sure. But so that was one of the more interesting scenarios. I'm trying to think. There was a scenario where we came out for a drone shoot for a client. And this is part of why we do a lot more due diligence now than we did when we started the agency. But I remember we were doing a drone shoot and like a video shoot, and just kind of like walk through explainer videos for a specific deal. I forget if it was a commercial or like a residential project, but we show up on the property, we're filming the walkthrough videos, I'm overseeing some of that stuff. And the property owner comes out and is like, what the hell are you guys doing? And we're just like, the client's talking to the property owner and being like, oh, we're just coming back out, documenting the work. I texted you, said we were coming out for the project. And they're like, you guys had like such and such go wrong with the project. Like, get off my property or we're going to sue you. Like, I better not see this on social media. And so like,
oh no,
stuff like that is always kind of an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you start something new, like, you're not necessarily thinking, if you shoot a text out and say like, hey, do we have permission to be here? And the client's like, yeah, like, absolutely.
Sure.
Like, you're not thinking we need to have like weeks long processes built out to like make sure that you have the rights to be, on a particular property or highlighting someone's business, for example.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, like, you learn a lot as you go, and you're like, there's a lot of that kind of process-based work that sucks, and like the organization-based work that sucks. Like, every marketing agency owner, every business owner, they want to do like the fun stuff. They want to do the cool stuff. They want to do the stuff that people see. But it's a lot of those like, hey, you need to make sure that you're doing this kind of stuff so that you don't run into scenarios like that. And thankfully, that was a super one-off scenario. Like, we've never had that happen in any other situation. But our process is definitely beefed up. So it's like, that's one for the client too. So just like, our clients have an opportunity to follow up with good deals that they've done in the past and be like, hey, like, we want to show this off because we loved working with you. Yeah. Versus, hey, we're showing up and, maybe there's some sort of communication discrepancy that like the client wasn't even aware of. And then it just so happens that we're doing like a feature to try to, put a positive light on the client's business. Yeah. And it ends up being more of a negative communication thing with a past client versus something that is kind of a stepping stone into furthering that relationship.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of crazy. Hopefully they made it right though.
Yeah.
Do you have like a normal routine? Obviously, being a business owner, things change on the fly all the time. So
yeah,
what's that like?
I think Alex Ramosi talks a lot about this. I watch a lot of his YouTube stuff. I honestly think that if anyone is looking to become an entrepreneur, looking to start a marketing agency, looking to run their own business of any kind, like, look up Alex Ramosi and like a lot of his YouTube videos. Like, I've learned more through YouTube specific to what I do than I have from a lot of my business professors. Loved my business professors at Biola University. Like, solid basis for building my business and like pushing my career off in the right direction, right? A lot of, especially digital marketing and just like running an agency or like running any kind of business, you just like learn best by actually doing the thing, right? Or learning from people who have done it before. So YouTube's a great resource for that. But in terms of my personal routine, so Alex Ramosi, he talks about like, essentially your success as a business owner is determined by how much stress you can handle, right? If you can handle a lot of stress and then pair that with an effective routine, pair that with good staffing, pair that with a good product that you give to your clients, you're in a really good spot. Yeah. Because if you are really good at managing stress, but you suck at like building a process or like delivering a product to the client, like that routine doesn't really matter, right? But in terms of my routine, it's definitely pushed me to be a lot more intentional with my own personal routine.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, hey, maybe like having ice cream and alcohol on like a Sunday night is probably not a good idea when you're going into like an early Monday morning meeting.
Sure.
And you don't always think about that kind of stuff when you don't have a bunch of projects lined up. But when you start to like take off a little bit more, you're like, oh, shoot, like all of these little micro things that I'm doing on a regular basis are actually potentially keeping me from new business or just being as impactful like on the day to day. So I know there's a lot of people that hate cold plunges, but I do those almost every morning for like 5 to 10 minutes, cold showers. I try to go to the gym to do resistance training 4 to 5 times a week. And I'm not the biggest guy. Like I'm not the most muscular guy in the gym by any stretch of the imagination, but I just do it more so for like my mindset, and it helps me kind of get in the right routine. And it just helps make me more alert.
Yeah.
Like if you're more alert, you're able to capitalize on opportunities a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just like in your head. Like it's a mental thing as much as it is showing up to meetings on time or having communication. Like if you're on point mentally, like you'll pick stuff up and become a lot better over time than if you're just kind of living life as you would normally if you didn't have a business.
Sure. Interesting perspective for sure. I think it's important to have a routine. I've known plenty of people that just kind of go off the whim most of the time. And I'm like, I feel like that's not really an effective way. I mean, life happens, days get shuffled, your routine kind of switches a little bit, but time management's a big one too. And I think that a lot of people really should follow that and don't. But having a routine is super important. So you kind of touched on this, but what advice would you give to, younger kids that are looking to either get into this field or just be a business owner in general, or make the leap from corporate to a business owner? Because that's a big topic of discussion.
Yeah. Great question. I think a lot of it comes down to just do it.
Yeah.
Like, I know it sounds stupid. I know it sounds cliche. Everyone's heard it from Nike advertisements since as long as they can remember.
Yeah.
But looking back, like if I would have done anything differently, like just go for it. Like literally what's the worst that can happen? Like, don't be stupid. Don't do things that are probably not a good idea. But you learn and execute a lot faster if you just go for it.
Yeah.
I look now at some of the stuff that I'm doing as a 30-year-old running an agency, and I'm like, I probably could have done this when I was 24, 25 if I had like that self-confidence to just like jump on a call with a client and be like, this is our recommendation. This is what we're doing. This is what we're executing on. Do you have any questions?
Sure.
Right. I think a lot of business owners, that's kind of where they fall to the wayside, where they're like, oh, well, we want to be sensitive to people. We want people to like feel welcome. And like all that stuff is great. But like if you're not delivering like a really great product, and especially if you're running an agency or any kind of service-based business where there's a lot of back and forth communication with the client, like those clients, they don't want to have to tell you what to do. Kind of back to, why we started the agency to begin with, right? They want someone who is confident about what they're doing and then backs that up with results.
Yeah.
So you can be technically proficient. And I would say, at 23, 24, 25, like technically I could have provided a lot of those services better if I just had kind of the self-confidence to jump out and be like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. This is the timetable. This is the outline, for the project. This is our recommendation. If you have any additional thoughts to add to that, but like, this is our project. Like we take ownership for the project. And if it completely fails or flubs, like that's okay. Like we'll find a way to like pivot and move to something that's better because not every client is the same. Right. Everyone that expects like, oh, well, this marketing campaign or this type of marketing worked really well for so-and-so over here.
Yeah.
That doesn't guarantee that it works for somebody over here.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of people that get caught up in, oh, well, marketing is just social media. Right. There's so much more to it with just tracking and attribution and like nitty gritty, like digital stuff. Like, sure, social media is a big part of it. Like having a big Instagram account helps. Right. But there's also a lot of people that like to take shortcuts and like pay for followers, like pay for engagement, like try to make themselves appear a lot bigger than they are. But the reality is, like, back to your original question, which is, talking about, what advice do I have for younger entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
It's like, a lot of the best stuff, like in my career, probably 80 to 95% of the stuff that's like actual differentiators in terms of like client experience and like case studies, like what they've gotten out of our projects is just grunt work. Like it's not flashy. It's
Yeah.
not like something where it's like, hey, we're all doing this together. It's very much like, you know, you're working for sometimes like multiple hours a day on specific client projects for weeks or months. And then all of a sudden, you know, it takes off because there was all that work to begin with. Like we've got one client right now that we just been doing a lot of YouTube work for them, like YouTube shorts, like posting long form videos, that kind of thing. And it was like one day, you know, the algorithm picked up their channel and essentially said, hey, we're going to give you, you know, hundreds of hours of watch time on this specific channel. And for them, they started off, they had like no subscribers. So for them, it was like, okay, this is why you do this stuff consistently.
Right.
And I think most people, this is kind of like maybe a different answer, but like for people that are like just getting into marketing, if you don't do the stuff that you need to be doing consistently, you're never going to experience any of the results. And certainly like there's things that maybe I wouldn't recommend you do.
Yeah.
Like maybe solely relying on Twitter for any of your business acquisition is probably not like the best thing. Like you could be super consistent on one platform and maybe it's just like not the right strategy. So that's part of like what I recommend is like do a bunch of different things at once, like test a bunch of different things and then let the results dictate where you go.
Sure.
Because you shouldn't be relying, even as just a business owner, you should never be relying on your gut. You should rely a little bit on your experience, but a lot of times, like especially when it comes to digital, and for any business owners out there that are running a business and kind of figuring out their marketing along the way, if they're kind of small to mid-size, or even some of these big companies, like they don't have marketing figured out. As we do audits for some of these companies, you know, they don't have retargeting campaigns set up, which blows my mind. You know, we're in 2024 and some of this stuff just is not set up. But a lot of it is just like executing.
Yeah.
And then like if it doesn't work, like move on to the next thing. And the more tests that you're running at any specific time, you know, both in terms of creatives, different types of campaigns, different platforms, like be creative with it. Like that's one of the funnest things about marketing is like you get to test different things with the idea that, hey, you know what? Even if this doesn't work, we're proud of the work that we did.
Yeah.
And if you're not proud of the work that you do, like it shows up in the creative, typically consumers, or if you're more B2B, like businesses that you're marketing to are like, these guys are just like everybody else. Like they don't really care about what they're putting out. Like they've got a very corporate vibe. Like I don't feel like they've humanized themselves. I don't feel like I'm working with actual people. And I think especially in the digital age, maybe this is a little bit of a rant, but like in a space where like everything is chat GPT, everything is digital marketing, everything is online, it is almost a differentiator in and of itself to move that back from technology and be like, hey, we're a company that's really built around relationships that's supported by technology.